Hello, everyone. This is Matt Hoots with Radon Green, and I've got an exciting guest with us today. I've got Tom Marks, and he represents dinosaurs, lots of dinosaurs, specifically Stego, which is a vapor mitigation, stops radon, stops all kinds of different harmful gases and vapor from getting into your houses. So he's going to explain all the different parts of their company, how their product works, where you install their product, and how you can find their product. So thanks, Tom, for joining us today and talking to us about Stego.
So yeah, I'm Tom Marks with Stego Industries. Been with Stego for about 14, almost 15 years now. Current role is business development project manager, which is a little bit of a mouthful, but basically means I'm a product manager for a couple of our barrier systems, as well as lead our sustainability efforts and have fun with all sorts of other projects and things going on and development at Stego. Stego's been around for 23 years, an industry leader in, as Matt said, vapor barrier systems, used below concrete floor slabs and in crawl spaces for homes and buildings of all shapes and sizes, all over the country, all over the world. Yes, we do some cool dinosaur related brands, but you'll see some other critters and images here, and we'll talk more about those a little bit later on. But what I wanted to do and what I thought might be useful is give a little bit of a background, a little bit of overarching building science, just kind of explaining the potential concerns and issues we have beneath homes and buildings, and really what the role of vapor barrier systems is to take the ground out of play, isolate the envelope of structures from a range of potential sub-slab concerns. And this little illustration here is trying to make in a clear way an illustration of what we might potentially be dealing with. Anything from moisture, and I'll talk a little bit about moisture vapor, which is kind of always a potential concern, to soil gases, radon, or even contamination that might migrate in a vapor intrusion situation. And even termites, subterranean termites can find a way into structures as well. And I guess the tease here is Stego has barrier systems for basically any condition, any application, and any foundation type as well. And for anyone listening, again, this is going to be sort of a broad, quick look, but we've got regional managers, technical representatives all over the country. So we pride ourselves on being a trusted resource and are happy to dig into design, installation, questions and assistance for projects, and even continuing education presentations, hour-long versions of these types of talks that can provide a much deeper dive into the issues and the solutions. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of those things under buildings that we're trying to protect against, where we've put a lot of our emphasis and the primary application and use of vapor barrier systems is a lot of times to stop the diffusive movement of water vapor from the ground into slabs or crawl spaces. And that's kind of the form of moisture that, at least from our experience, has been a little bit more misunderstood and overlooked in the construction industry. It's gotten a lot better on the commercial side of things, but still, I think, somewhat misunderstood in the residential landscape. And of course, on any side of our home or our building, we're working to keep it dry. But under a slab or under a home, under a building, we've got this potential constant migration of moisture vapor, moving from higher to lower pressure environments. We all know moisture vapor likes to go from more to less. And the problem can get worse, and where we start to see issues is not only when we put a building over it, but might cast a concrete slab or potentially accumulation in a crawl space environment. And like a lot of building science discussions where we start to see some problems is what boils down to a dew point scenario. We might have the accumulation of water vapor in a concrete slab that's cast on the earth, or in a crawl space. And as water vapor accumulates in those areas, we can get a higher relative humidity and obviously potential dew point condensation on surfaces that are at that dew point temperature. When we're talking about concrete floor slabs as part of the foundation, where the industry has seen a lot of issues as a result of water vapor transmission, happens at or near our flooring materials and flooring failures. And sometimes it's because some different types of flooring systems are sensitive to moisture and humidity themselves, like hardwood. But a lot of times what we've seen, certainly in the commercial world, is the breaking down of flooring adhesives. And a lot of that is due to changes with EPA restrictions and guidelines for the types of adhesives we use in the construction environment. And in the flooring world, with water-based adhesives now, they work great, but they're just much less tolerant to high pH. And high pH is created in concrete slabs if moisture is potentially reintroduced. Going a little further, obviously, we also get concerns about indoor air quality. Mold and mildew and odors and all that kind of stuff that go along with it become an issue and concern if we've got moisture introduced into the environment. And these pictures here are not great, but they're showing some examples of mold growth in and around flooring materials because of water vapor transmission and accumulation and condensation. Then there's soil gases as well. As Matt, you mentioned, radon's a big concern, big driver, especially in the residential marketplace. Moves in a similar way to water vapor in terms of pressure and concentration differentials between the source and the building envelope. And especially when we get to some more hot areas of the country, radon mitigation becomes a critical part of new construction design or new slab design or crawl space design. And a vapor barrier is often an important component to mitigation system. Typically, you're seeing some depressurization, active depressurization, or at least passive, incorporated into that new radon mitigation design as well. And then sometimes projects of different shapes and sizes might deal with even more robust chemicals of concern and their potential migration into an envelope through vapor intrusion. This might be industrial waste or chlorinated solvents from a dry cleaner across the street from a new build, or a gas station, for example. And I think this is a little illustration here, but in vapor form, in visible vapor form, these chemicals can migrate as well into a building envelope. And so, again, like radon, a barrier system, maybe a specially engineered barrier system, is often an important part of a mitigation system for dealing with vapor intrusion as well. Through these graphics here. And then in some parts of the country, it's not just moisture and vapor, but even subterranean termites that can lead to problems as well with structural damage and infestation into the envelope. So all these problems, or all these concerns, when it sort of boils down to it, like I said, a effective, low permeance, properly installed vapor control system, or vapor barriers, as I'll typically call it, is there to isolate the ground and these concerns from, or the building with a home, isolate that from these concerns and these issues. Because at the end of the day, we start worrying about the costs, the impact, the liability with moisture damage and indoor air quality, and even environmental impacts, having to go and fix a problem once it's happened. um, and the impact that might have on carbon emissions, and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to vapor barrier systems, vapor control layers at your foundation, although there's unique systems that are designed for certain applications, by and large, we're going to be engineering our systems and looking for products that have some key performance characteristics. Probably first and foremost is a low vapor permeance. How well does it actually stop or impede, at least, the vapor we're trying to control from going through it? Longevity, especially in a below-slab environment, pretty harsh. High alkaline concrete placed on a membrane, wetting and drying over time, temperature changes, exposure to soil organisms. So we want to make sure we have a membrane that maintains its integrity, maintains its performance over the life of the home or the building. Strength, too. If it gets torn, ripped, damaged during installation up until concrete placement, or even just in a crawl space environment, it's not doing much good. So strength is another important characteristic of vapor barrier systems. And we've got in the industry all sorts of standards and guidelines and code requirements that sort of dictate this, but that might be a discussion for another time to get into the weeds on that. Often when I'm sort of just introducing the role that vapor barriers play and kind of how they've evolved in the industry over time, I like to mention that not all plastic is created equal. So even though vapor barrier systems under slabs and for foundation vapor control are typically plastic films, there's a big difference between what a lot of us think of historically as generic poly sheeting, what I call visqueen, typically thin gauged material, used for a long time in the construction industry, still used for a number of applications and situations. But in this specific application, under a slab or in a crawl space, if it's intended to cover the exposed earth and maintain a level of performance, generic poly sheeting doesn't quite cut it, at least not to meet current industry best practices and standards and code requirements. So what we have more so in the industry being used and hopefully being used in the future too, and what Stego products are engineered as, is higher performance virgin polyolefin films. So providing a lot more consistency with those key characteristics, quality from one roll to the next, and especially when you start getting into efficacy for certain applications and chemicals and things like that, even strategic layers that provide that benefit. So it's kind of gets into basically a difference between engineered films versus generic plastic. And a visual that sometimes hits home with folks is these pictures here on the left of a Stego wrap product under a slab, and on the right, a slab that originally used a 6 mil visqueen, and 10 years later, so all this slab was down for, most of it had deteriorated and broken down over time in that environment. So yeah, we like to think we've got a barrier solution for any project. I'll go through some of these systems a little bit here. Our flagship product that a lot of people know Stego from is Stego Wrap. Billions of square feet of new buildings, hospitals, schools, warehouses, data centers have Stego Wrap beneath them. It's the most specified water vapor barrier in North America, and used for a lot of commercial projects, but certainly has been a choice for residential builders as well throughout the country. But with that said, one of our newest barrier systems is called Stego Home. So same sort of high performance technology is that we have with Stego Wrap, but engineered with a roll size, weight, a little more suited for single family residential construction applications. Pango Wrap is a 2-in-1 moisture vapor and subterranean termite barrier. So some parts of the country, this becomes a nice option often as a more sustainable choice compared to traditional pesticide, termiticide sprays and chemical pretreatment that's done on new homes and buildings. Stego Crawl is our crawl space encapsulation system. So same idea, but specifically engineered for crawl spaces covering the earth and attached to the perimeter wall. And obviously, in the case of Stego Crawl, given a nice, clean, bright look with the white color. And this has all different thicknesses and roll sizes just to fit different project budgets and performance levels. And Drago Wrap is a vapor intrusion barrier, so really robustly engineered as a barrier to pretty some of the more difficult to control chemicals of concern, the things you might find on a brownfield redevelopment site. So not something you're going to run into on every project, but for situations where that's a concern, can be a really important component to effective soil gas and vapor intrusion mitigation system. So yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to interest in building and designing higher performance, healthier, efficient, durable homes and buildings, there's a lot of components to that, but foundation vapor control and vapor barrier systems, I think, do play an important role, especially when we start looking at the performance characteristics we want, vapor permeance and strength and longevity. This can align with some of those overall sustainability goals that we're often going for. A couple unique things about Stego products specifically, which I'll just touch on, pretty quickly here. We've got the only, or at least the first of its kind, life of the building warranty for all of these systems, performance warranty, and just kind of reinforces a level of quality and longevity that's needed in the long-term performance of buildings and homes. And then we've got a couple highlights here with a little more unique contributions to some of different green building rating systems and just, again, overall alignment with what we're going for in a sort of a holistic sustainability perspective. We've done health product declarations to look at the material, ingredient, and hazard impacts of our wraps and most of our accessories. We're the only vapor barrier manufacturer with an HPD that contributes to the LEED material transparency credit. We've got low VOC emission testing for many of our key accessories, which I think is especially useful in the crawl space environment, where especially a conditioned closed crawl space is part of the home. And so having components that are not emitting harmful chemicals is a good thing there. And then some other things, which won't go into too much depth right now. Folks might be interested in just seeing how a vapor barrier system would be implemented, installed on a project. These are some quick pictures. You can imagine a similar installation for all of our barrier systems. Most of it's fairly straightforward, but there are unique project characteristics, unique conditions where we can get involved and help walk a design professional or an installing contractor through best practices and tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, the idea is, again, to isolate the building from the ground, take the ground out of play. So we're usually trying to cover the entire footprint of that slab placement area or a crawl space, creating a monolithic membrane, overlapping and sealing the seams, usually with a specially designed seaming tape like this. Penetrations, utilities should all be sealed. And these pictures kind of show some different ways of doing that. Tape, mastic on the left there. And the perimeter. of the installation should be a point of sealing as well. And there's different ways of doing that: double-sided tapes, mastics, a specially designed tape that bonds to new concrete for like a monolithically placed slab on grade. But solutions for every sort of condition, and sometimes it just means a little specific detailing and guidance for whoever's installing it as well. And I guess last but not least, you had a hole or a tear or something like that before concrete placement, those should be sealed up as well. And then here's a crawl space example again. Nuance here is you typically be probably mechanically fastening the barrier at the perimeter wall for long-term and a long-term permanent installation. It's not going to go anywhere at that point. And then some of these other systems, again, pretty similar, but when you start getting into VOCs and termites, installation probably becomes that much more important. If we're air sealing or trying to minimize any small gaps for termite infiltration. So all that becomes pretty critical. We can use great products, but they have to be installed right too. And that's again where we can kind of come in and provide support for project teams. So that, yeah, that's a quick rundown of Stego products and the role that vapor barriers play in high performance, healthy, and efficient buildings.
Thanks, Tom, for that wonderful presentation, and thanks for sharing all the different products. It looks like you guys definitely have the first side of the building, and I saw that in the initial slide covered, which is the bottom side, which I hate to admit, in residential, we do a pretty good job ignoring it. A lot of times we'll have vented crawl spaces, and then we're just counting on a little bit of insulation to stop anything from coming through. We all know that insulation is not that vapor barrier. It is not that air barrier that we really need. So essentially, we're letting all these bad gases into residential. And on the commercial side, looks like you have many different products as well. I love the fact that you touched on termites. Termites are an issue here in the Southeast. So the fact that your barrier helps with that, and it has that lifetime warranty, which is pretty impressive. Thanks for your time and sharing that all with us today.